Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Hood with Tractor Zoom. I'm your host, Andy Campbell, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can obviously see where I'm at, or I might need a little description. I am sitting inside a very nicely restored 4020 John Deere tractor, and thus the topic of today's Trends in 10. We're talking all about tractors. I've been getting a lot of requests lately to know what's going on in the market, but specifically about supply, and a lot of the dealers that I'm talking to are very concerned about the supply of tractors, larger row crop tractors, four-wheel drive tractors especially. And so within this Trends in 10, I'm going to dive into the supply, the rate of change that I'm seeing in supply, and what effect that is having on some of the values, specific make and models. Now, I can't go into absolutely everything, and since we're keeping this Trends in 10 specifically centered around tractors, we have a webinar coming up. The webinar is going to be held here in about a month, so held in October of 2024. You can go to the show notes. You can find the link, register. It's completely free. You can also go to TractorZoomPro.com, and then you can look in our events tab, and then you can always register for our webinars or even our newsletter so you can be alerted whenever the next webinar is coming up. They're always free. Make sure you do that so you can be on top of the latest equipment trends as they come out. So let's go into these Trends in 10 specifically on tractors. And this is coming hot off of the Farm Progress Show. I was able to head up there for a day, see a lot of our dealer friends, and also check out some of the newer tech that is arriving. And then also witness a inventory reduction auction that Van Wall was holding with in concert with Sullivan. And a lot of the prices are hitting exactly where we thought they would. Here towards the end of August of 2024. And a lot of our analysis now surrounds around this time frame. So what I'm going to show you here, what I'm going to talk about, are values that have happened in July and August, and I'm comparing those to what happened earlier in 2024, and in some cases what happened in 2023 as a reference point. But for some of these categories that the supply is getting a little out of whack, we're seeing a drastic enough change that we're seeing a difference from what happened in March to even, 7 months later in August, now going into September. So let's start on the utility tractor side of things. So when I look at the utility tractor supply year over year, the supply for those is down about 12% year over year. Now, speaking of the economic side of things, demand is already down. It's down across the board. So when we look at supply and demand and talk about that here, we can almost remove that from the equation because we know it's suppressing the market. We know it's going to drive values down. But when we look across categories, what's that difference maker going to be? A lot of it is going to be the supply that's out there in the market. So that's obviously the focus here. So back to utility tractors. Supply is down 12% year over year. I also went back and looked month to month. How has that supply changed? And looking over the past 12 months with utility tractors, the supply has dropped 9 out of the last 12 months when you look month over month. So all the efforts that dealers are doing, sales incentives, reaching out to their customers, inventory reduction auctions, whatever they're doing, it's working, and it's having an effect on the values with that lower supply. So specifically, I looked at a model 6120E, and for solid quality tractors, the values are relatively flat with those. And when I'm talking the quality tractors, they've got a loader, obviously they've got a cab, low hours. I'm seeing a lot of price parity from now and the first half of 2024, even some late 23 models or sales that were going on. That's flat. The change happens once you get to be talking about further down the depreciation curve. Once you're tacking on maybe 2,000 hours, then you start to see a little bit of a steepening of that depreciation curve. Now, the change with these utility tractors comes when you have a more of a commoditized, lower value utility tractor. So you're talking no cab on it, especially, but even if you just don't have a loader on it, so more of just a functional tractor there. Now we're seeing the price drop to almost 5 to 14% year over year from last year. So you go commoditize on these utility tractors, and we're seeing a bigger price difference. Okay, let's move on to the smaller row crop tractors. So 175 up to 300 horsepower. With the supply on these they're about the same that they were last year. So not an increase, not a decrease there. And when we look at that month-over-month change, they've been dropping 7 out of the last 12 months. So batting better than 500 here, moving in the right direction, although a little more slowly. The lower horsepower models, those values are steady. And even once you get up into almost the 300s, even the 8R 310, it's a little over that threshold. But when you look at that for those late model low hours, those are holding steady right now. And again, similar to those utility tractors, once you lengthen that out, once you look at things that might have more than 2,000 hours on it, they've been worked. That's where we're starting to see those values really drop considerably. The farmer or the user that's buying that is feeling a little bit more of the price pressure, and there's not as many bidders down there. We're seeing those auction values drop considerably from what they were. But when you're on the late model low hour, we're not seeing a big difference between now and the spring of 24 with those particular models. Now, let's move on to the higher horsepower type of tractors, and this is where it really gets interesting. Supply is different here with these higher horsepower large row crop tractors. The 300 to 425 horsepower category supplies up 20% year over year with these. And again, looking at that month-over-month change, that rate of supply change, it's up 7 out of the last 12 months. So kind of an inverse of what we saw for the lower horsepower tractors. And a great focus point here is the 8R 410s. So for the 8R 410s, again, seeing an increase in value. Can't quite get this one under control yet. The values are down about 7% from just 2 months ago. So we're talking June to August. We're seeing a pretty remarkable difference in the values that we're seeing at auction, 7%. And when you look year over year, about a 14% drop in the 8R 410s. And so again, that's the effect that oversupply and not yet being able to get a handle and turn the corner on that supply. And that's the effect that that's having. Let's go to even bigger. 4-wheel drive tractors, they are getting hit the hardest. And take this into perspective. Last year at this time, we weren't even talking about a supply issue with 4-wheel drive tractors. The American Equipment Manufacturers Association was putting out their monthly numbers, and the 4-wheel drive tractor orders and the sales were still on an increasing month-over-month basis at this time. Whereas combines and row crop tractors, we're already starting to feel a little bit of the supply pressure and drawing these things down. Not so with 4-wheel drive tractors. They were late to the party, and now they're facing the repercussions of this one. The overall supply is up 45% year over year with these. Again, when I look at that month-over-month supply change, it's up 9 out of the last 12 months. So these are certainly not, the supply is not handled yet. We have not turned the corner, and it probably have a little ways to go on these. One tractor, one model that I looked into specifically because there was a couple being sold at that Van Wall auction at the Farm Progress Show. Those 9620 RXs are down 11% on average in their auction values from this time, from the springtime. So about 6 to 8 months ago, it's already down 11%. But again, that's a 45% supply increase that we've seen on that market. So that's the economics lesson here. The supply is having a pretty big effect on the price, considering the existing demand pressures that we have, and those demand pressures more than likely are not going away anytime soon. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about these details within the tractors, but also the combine market, self-propelled sprayer market, we'll go into supplies for planters, a whole host of other equipment categories. Make sure you sign up for the webinar in the link below. If you have any questions, about specific categories you want us to cover, or questions within those categories, make sure you reach out to us ahead of time so we can cover that in the webinar. Like I said, it's on TractorZoomPro.com or in the show notes. This is Andy Campbell with Beyond the Hood's Trends in 10. Hope you've enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.